Define as your culture.
Culture. Uh, um, I guess uh, American, a little bit of Thai heritage, especially in the food, like the food, what I eat, what is become a part of my diet, it hugely represents my identity.
If you were to give like a definition of culture, what would you say?
It is, uh, it is your diet. What you eat on a day-to-day basis, represents your culture.
What role do you think culture has shaped your beliefs and behaviors?
Say that one more time.
Okay, so if I said, what role do you think culture has shaped your behaviors, would you just say food or would you add
Yes.
anything else?
No, food is the predominant way that it shaped my culture.
Have you feel that your culture has changed your decision making processes, such as just
N-
risk assessment and problem solving?
No.
Okay. Cognition, you only have two more questions. Cognition refers to the mental processes and activities related to like using information basically. Okay. Do you feel like stereotypes regarding your culture have affected your cognition? So basically how you acquire information and your behavior.
Yes.
Okay. Could you say how?
I guess in a way where like it makes me want to improve, to go against the stereotypes.
Like like what kind of stereotypes?
Let's see, what's a good Asian stereotype? Can you give me like a list
Do you want me to
of
say some
Asian?
Asian stereotype?
Yes. No offense.
Like well no oh I am Asian too. Saying math, so I'm not gonna get offended over that. Math,
Yeah.
like being good at math.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Being quiet and humble.
Asian stereotypes. Oh yeah, being quiet and humble. That is one thing that I try to improve over my lifetime. I used to be quiet and shy and not outgoing. Now I'm more. I tend to be out of my comfort zone in order to challenge my quietness. I try to speak when it's like there's a dead zone, etc.
Hmm. Slightly different. Not seeming emotional. So you would say that you try to go against that stereotype.
Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes like the 100 years ago, uh, I guess like people thought that like Asians were hella greedy and stuff.
I can see that. I thought Jews were more greedy.
You mean you thought that Jews were thought to be more greedy, right? Just
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah,
okay,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. This is why I'm not attaching names to this, by the way, and then I could edit the fuck out of. Anyways, another stereotype apparently was misogyny.
yeah. That's definitely a big part in more of the Chinese cultures, Chinese, Japanese. Not really much in Thailand.
Yeah. So again,
But
we're talking about like your own culture, not
yeah,
okay. Okay, but I see your point because I'm reading the article on Asian culture. Yeah. Okay. Never mind. Really, I don't know what Thai stereotypes are. Okay.
yeah. There's not much.
Yeah. I should have sucking on ice. Okay. I think it's a myth, not a.
I mean, I suck on ice if I eat something really spicy, but that's like a normal reaction.
Yeah, I don't. I think everyone does it. I think the website just sucks. Okay, okay, and then these other ones are related to Thailand and not. I know that some countries are related to their country of origin, but these are specifically about the national. Anyways, so we're going to the last question. Do you feel power imbalances can affect culture?
Power imbalances, like no.
Thank you. What would you consider your culture to be? You can list as many as you want, or one, or zero.
What do you mean by that?
Culture, usually a community that people identify with that share commonality. Like, do you want an example?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm gonna go for a crude example. Like sometimes hobbies, like a gamer, but also some people would say a nationality or their sorry, ethnicity or race or various other things. Maybe a niche community that you like or something like that. Various things.
American Chinese?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Don't feel like you're ever gonna give wrong answers because these are all opinions and all that, right? I guess I'm not gonna ask you what you define as culture because you asked that question. But what role do you think your culture has placed on your beliefs or behaviors?
I don't know about that fact.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, that's entirely fine. And it's okay if you don't know how to answer this one. I'm just gonna rephrase it. So you don't feel like being Asian American, I'm sorry, American Chinese person has affected you in any way?
Not really.
Okay. Cognition refers to like mental processes of acquiring and obtaining information. Some people would say it's similar to learning, but not necessarily. Do you feel like stereotypes have affected your acquiring of information at all?
I guess.
Okay. Could you say like how, or give an example, or?
Not really though.
Okay, that's fine. Do you feel that power imbalances can affect culture?
I think balance. Cause I mean, how do I answer that? I don't know.
Okay, that's entirely fair. What would you define as your culture?
Like ethnic wise, or
I'm not going to clarify. Whatever you identify as.
well, I'm a mix of Asian and American, so mostly those. However, there's also what is broadly defined as nerd culture, which I also happen to partake in quite a bit.
If you were to give a rough definition of culture, what would you say it is?
Like a social group, but on a much larger scale. A commonality that people can talk about together. It's not really defined by a group or a one specific common thing. It's no matter where you go or where you're from, you can talk to someone about this, about these topics or certain commonalities, be it ethnicity or just common tastes that people like.
What role do you think it being culture has shaped your beliefs or behaviors?
My own culture?
Yeah.
Honestly, it's not really changed my perspective a bit. I view other cultures and I gain perspective from that. But my own has kind of shaped me at first, but not that much. It's more viewing outside cultures that shaped me. It's like, oh, comparing my own upbringing to that.
What kind of like neutral, positive, negative, what?
Relatively positive. I reflect on past actions and how the culture affected me and how other cultures deal with different situations and why they process information that way and why they do what they do.
Yes, could you give an example?
It's mostly just minor things like how other countries, you do one thing in one country and in another country that would be looked down upon or can be very considered rude. But if your home country, it's completely normal. Go overseas, a thing like saying hi to someone just randomly on the street would be considered weird to some people, while where you're from, it's just considered normal and just very positive behavior.
How do you feel your culture has influenced specifically more so your decision-making processes, such as risk assessment and problem solving?
Honestly, it shaped that pretty much for a long time. I had to look at other cultures to change it. But for me, for a long time, it was brute force my way through. If I don't get something done, just try again, but try harder. And risk assessment did play a heavy part in risk assessment. If it's not worth it, don't do it.
Coming from what cultural background?
Mostly my Asian side that decided like, hey, risk assessment. If this action will not get you the benefits or you're risking too much, don't take it.
Do you feel like stereotypes regarding your culture has affected your cognition and behavior?
At first, but as I entered my teenage years, it's kind of just petered out. I don't feel like it affects me that much anymore. I felt like it affected me when I was younger, but as I got older, it started affecting me less and less as I started veering away from my own personal culture and looking at a few others.
Do you feel like stereotypes regarding your culture, specifically the stereotypes, has affected your cognition and behavior?
No, not particularly.
Do you feel that, when you say not in particularly, like...
I used to feel pressured to fit the stereotype, or at least the positive aspects of the stereotype, and when I didn't fit those standards, I felt bad. But as I got older, I realized that sometimes not everyone fits neatly into that definition that people set for that culture, and I just couldn't really achieve that level of what they expected of that stereotype for me. And when I realized that, it didn't bother me anymore.
Feel that power imbalances can affect culture?
Yes. Some cultures have a class system. Those are inherently decided like, oh, this person is superior because they're from a higher class, and whatever determines that class, be it standing in society or birth, something that defined you at birth. I feel like that it's a social hierarchy, and that's just inherently, what's the word you used?
Power imbalances can affect culture.
Oh yes, power imbalances do affect that, especially with classes.
Sorry, I thought you were looking for like a specific word. I don't know if you were like looking for a specific word in that sentence or...
No. This was just like the general idea of power imbalance.
Oh, okay. So you would say that class and culture are somewhat intertwined.
Culture can be used to justify certain standings and certain views. For example, if a class system, you want the government wants to enforce a class system, then over time that class system just becomes part of the culture, and people carry that even if it's not enforced.
What would you say your culture is?
My culture?
Yeah.
I believe my culture is Chinese, yeah.
What do you define as culture as like a definition?
Culture is something that is unique to a group of people or community.
What role do you think it, as in culture, has shaped your beliefs and or behaviors?
I think when it comes to, well, like my culture at least, I think it definitely changes my behavior habits and my eating habits as well. Like, for example, my family loves to eat rice practically every day, to be honest. And behaviorally is that in Chinese culture is a lot stricter when it comes to academics as well. And because of that, it makes me more ambitious when it comes to the academic side of my life.
How do you feel your culture has influenced your decision-making processes, such as risk assessment and problem solving, aside from academics?
I think it has teach me to stay cautious and stay like more prepared in certain situations. As when it comes to our culture is like you should not make mistakes if you if you do not want to make mistakes. So I try to stay cautious. I try to make sure I'm not in a bad situation at all. I try to make myself in a good situation all the time.
Do you feel like stereotypes regarding your culture affect your cognition and behavior? So basically your way of thinking and way of getting information.
Yeah, I believe so. There's a lot of like Asian stereotypes out there. Like, for example, essentially all Asians are good at math. I don't believe that's true, but it does affect me. It does affect me a little bit, as everyone's perception is that Asians are good at academics or math related stuff or instruments, right? So as subconsciously, I feel like that affects me a little bit.
You are saying yes, but how?
How? So it's like consciously, I know these stereotypes are not true in a lot of sense, but subconsciously I feel like because it's like in the ether out there, I'm unintentionally like conforming to these stereotypes. And since my culture is like based on we are supposed to be good at academics, I'm like unintentionally being led to those stereotypes.
Do you feel that power imbalances can affect culture?
Power imbalances? Yeah, because who are in power, they have definitely a lot of influence and a lot of sway when it comes to people around the community. So if someone has a lot of influence and they try to change a certain way of the culture, then people are probably going to follow that.
What would you say your culture is?
Yeah, I'm assuming I'm not getting any more clarifications on what you mean by culture.
Like how do you identify with what cultural group do you identify with?
Okay, let's see.
Or groups, plural.
I guess ethnically I'm Chinese, and nationalities I'm American, though I feel like I identify with American more than Chinese.
Thank you for your answer, and I'm just going to respond with this for the most part. As a definition, like a rough definition, what do you think culture is, if you have one?
No specific, just culture in the word?
Yeah.
Is that, okay. I guess just any groups that have identifiable common traits.
What role do you think it being culture has shaped your beliefs and or behaviors?
Through multiple generations, so basically parents.
Could you give an example?
Let me think. I guess one example would be my parents going through Chinese history with the Civil Revolution and how they might have changed their views on capitalism.
Sorry, did you say it changes your view on capitalism?
Changed their views and then in turn changed my views.
Oh, because they're communists or something?
Not exactly. More like just what they value.
Like money?
I guess contrasting with communism is a good example. Or like just how wealth should be distributed and who should distribute it or have a role in distributing it.
I have a more unique question that I don't ask other people. Why did your parents come to America?
When?
Why?
Oh. It's kind of tough to answer. Let's see. I think mostly my mom came to escape my dad's side of the family. Didn't really get along.
Okay. Why specifically America?
I have no clue. I guess it's because my mom's sister came first. But if you ask why she came first, I have no clue.
Okay, so chain migration, I guess. Okay, thank you. Do you feel that culture has influenced your specific decision-making processes, such as risk assessment and problem solving? Yeah, I know that's a
Risk assessment, maybe. Problem solving, I'm not so sure.
give an example, I guess.
I feel like I tend to be more conservative when I make decisions. I know that's kind of like a stereotype of Chinese people, but bear with me, I guess. I feel like most Chinese people just tend to err on the safer side of decision making. Like, I would just try not to leave my house at night, and that's an example, I think.
Do you feel like stereotypes? I guess you did answer that in a sense, but I'll ask again if you want to give another example. Do you feel that stereotypes regarding your culture have affected your cognition and behavior?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of an example, unless you don't need one.
I mean, I don't like need one, but it's like if you could give one, that would be cool.
I'll hold on to that.
I guess so. We're talking about specifically about stereotypes. So do you feel like pressured because other people may think a certain way, or because you think they think a certain way?
Generally, when I think, I have like some sort of suspicion that they're thinking about me in a certain way, I try to just ask them about it and try to be chill about it.
Do you feel that power imbalances can affect culture?
Yes, specifically political power, I guess.
Okay. Do you have anything to add on to that, or no?
I guess not really.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you for your time. Okay, what is your culture?
I am Chinese, Asian. My ethnicity is Chinese.
Okay. What would you define as culture? Like, what do you have as that definition?
I define culture as the parts of my ethnicity that I belong within. What I'm trying to say is my practices, food, mannerism, etc.
Okay, what role do you think has shaped your beliefs or behavior?
My parents shaped my behavior.
How do you feel that your culture has influenced your decision-making processes, such as risk assessment and problem solving?
For me, in Chinese culture, I was brought up to be to listen to my elders, to study and get good grades, and to not shame the family. Honor.
One definition of cognition is referring to the mental processes and activities related to acquiring, processing, storing, and using information. Do you feel like stereotypes regarding your culture have affected your cognition or behavior?
Yes.
In what way?
For example, I do have stereotypes about other races.
Oh,
Because of my culture.
so I meant like about your own culture, but
Oh, okay.
okay. So no, your own culture.
Oh, my own culture.
Yeah.
Okay, wait a minute. Sorry, I was confused about that. My own culture. Wait, can you repeat the question again? It's confusing for
Do
me.
you feel like stereotypes regarding your culture have like, affected your cognition and behavior?
Yes, yes. For example, Asians are seen as being very smart in math, which truth is I'm not that very good at math. In Asian culture, Asians are seen as supposed to be obedient, reserved.
You would say that, well, so you're saying you're not going along with these stereotypes, but the question was, how do you feel about that?
Oh, I feel these stereotypes are not. I feel that these stereotypes are not true and not right. I don't go along with it.
Oh, okay. Do you feel that power imbalances can affect culture?
Yes.
Okay, could you explain?
Okay. Power imbalance. Asians, for example, Asians are seen as a minority in the U.S. There is a thing called the glass ceiling, where bamboo ceiling, to be exact, bamboo ceiling, where Asians and management have difficulty advancing in management positions for jobs.
What would you say your culture is?
My culture, I'd say my culture is Chinese and Filipino. Are we using
Whatever a person identifies as, I'm going to accept.
Okay.
Give a rough definition of culture. What would you say it is?
I think it's based on your heritage and the environment you grow up around.
What role do you think it, being culture, has shaped your beliefs and or behaviors?
Ooh, has shaped my behaviors, right?
Yeah, or beliefs,
Okay.
behaviors, yeah,
Beliefs and
whatever.
behaviors. Okay, beliefs and behaviors. Okay. I think one of them has been like finding what right and wrong is. I think that's major play shaping that and how I see what's right and what's wrong, or good and bad. Good and evil, yes.
So, like, being Chinese and Filipino,
Mhm.
you know, I roughly know what Chinese culture is, and it's various old stuff. But what is Filipino culture? How's that specifically? Can you give me some examples of that?
Examples of it, I'd say similar to any other. Well, I guess similar to Chinese too. It's that familial.
Beatel?
Yeah, familial.
Okay.
Family
yeah.
connection. I'd say that's a similar thing that Filipino culture has.
I'm sorry, but let me phrase this. Anything that's different in almost any way from Chinese culture.
I would say that certain traditions are different. Can it be as small as like 2? I mean,
Yeah, a lot of
foods are
people.
different.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but food has been a common thing that other people have been saying.
How we see other yeah, how we see other cultural groups too. There's a difference in that. Different cultures.
You don't have to answer this, and I may figure this out, honestly, if you say no. So, what do you feel like it's like? I wouldn't say xenophobia, but up like close to that in a sense.
In comparison to like the Chinese culture side to Filipino. Like,
No, just in a like a vague sense.
Yes, I think so. I'm grasping what you're putting down a little
Okay.
bit. There is some hostility or some hatred in there.
By the way, just like my own opinion, in comparison to Chinese culture, I don't believe that Filipino culture can be more xenophobic than Chinese culture sometimes.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
But I also don't know many Filipino people or stuff, so I don't.
Yeah, that's like, again, like, because I'm closer to my Chinese side, and from what I've seen from at least a little bit of my Filipino side, there's not much of what's going on. Well, that's not true. You know, you're right. My perspective is very limited.
I mean, I wouldn't say your perspective is limited. Like, in comparison to, like, a study or society, sure. But, like, you would know more than me because I mostly just know Chinese people, in a sense. That's a weird way to phrase it. But, yeah. Anyways, you feel like your culture has influenced your decision-making processes, such as risk assessment and problem solving?
Ooh, I would say yes. Risk and problem solving, right? That was our other question.
Risk assessment and problem solving, but, you know, basically the way you conduct yourself.
Yeah, you know, I'd say that I agree with that. Definitely. I think growing up, right, in a Asian household, the bar is pretty high, and being surrounded with friends that are athletically and academically better, and hearing that their accomplishments and what their parents post in comparison to like what I've done kind of messes you up a bit.
Sorry, could you, for clarity, could you state the specific stereotype that you're talking about right now?
Yeah, what is it called? Not elitism, I don't feel like that's the right word. No, it's, I don't know what word to even describe it, but like, I think I'd say that. It's like, expected to be hitting a certain bar similar to other kids, I guess, when I was growing up.
So, this would not be a stereotype of your family, it would be a stereotype of yourself.
No, I would say it's a common stereotype. Well, common stereotype of having to be the smartest or the most, like, I guess. I don't know. That helping? I don't know.
I mean, personally, I think you're describing a stereotype of yourself, which is what I'm going for. But if you see it as a stereotype of your family as a whole, then that could be a thing too, I guess. It's not directly related to my question. It's just something to know for sure.
Oh, well, I was going back to, like, I don't know. I was thinking about culture still too. I was just like, you know, the Asian stereotype of like, gotta have like a 4.0 or something like that, or gotta have like a lot. I don't know. That was what
those are stereotypes of yourself, not like your families aren't students. You know what I mean? So it would have to.
No. Okay, I didn't say that correctly. It's just like, I don't know. Was it like the most like typical Asian stereotype? Oh, they're like the smartest, like having to do, you know, having the best job, preparing for the best job. That like, I don't know if that's if I'm translating that correctly.
Yeah, another person also said, I, to a degree, understand that, especially wearing fucking glasses. Okay. So, do you feel like stereotypes regarding your culture have affected your cognition and behavior? And I guess you could talk more about how your expectations, a little bit, how it affects your cognition skills.
My cognition's also pretty like poor, so you gotta give me like a second. You're pretty much asking, does my culture affect? Is it going back to like how I think or process things still? Is that?
Yeah, how you mentally process and store, use information.
Okay. Has my culture affected that? Yes, I think it has. I think for me, it's like, I think going through school, growing up, acquire as much information as possible that will only information that will help you succeed in life, like useful information, I guess. Video games or watching TV shows, media, that things like that you shouldn't have remembered mentally, and only the most useful things, I think. Does that make sense?
Like you feel like your culture directly attributed to that.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you feel that power imbalances can affect culture?
Wait, sorry, power imbalance? Power imbalance or power balance?
Imbalance.
Power imbalance is culture?
Yeah, do you think that power imbalances can affect culture? Sorry, that was a full question.
Okay. Could you define how you're using power in the context, or is that just up to my interpretation of how I'm understanding the question?
Give you a definition that I haven't really given anyone else. It's the ability to do something, but also in the recognition of, like financial power and etc. on the globe. I'm not even gonna say on a societal scale, just like on a local to societal, like any power imbalance that could affect culture.
I mean, yes, and that, what you gave me for like the examples of power, I'd say yes, it can affect culture. That's why we have culture wars so much. I don't know if you want me to go into detail of why I think that. Do you want me to go into detail of that, or?
So in general, I will just let the person speak.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then I'll just say with an easy answer, yes, power imbalances culture.
I really wanted to go into it, like.
No, I don't like explaining.
Okay.
Really,
Okay.
sometimes it can be summed up in like, I don't know, that can be somewhat understood. So
I'll ask this for clarification. The word cultural wars or culture something?
sorry, to me define culture wars, correct?
First of all, I'm asking you just if you said that specifically.
Yes, I did say culture wars.
Okay.
That's correct.
So I guess what would your rough definition of that?
Culture wars would be here. I'll say that culture wars is either. I'll give I guess an example. Just like one, it's like one being more or explaining themselves why they're more victimized than the other, and always trying to deserve more than another, more deserving of stuff than others. And I think also culture wars is also just like racism too, thinking that one's better than the other.
What would you identify as your culture?
One aspect would be ethnic background, I guess. Another would be like, I don't know, my family's identities, my friends, I guess, aspects of my own identity. I don't know.
Okay, so that's my second question of what would you define as culture. But I guess, again, what do you identify as your own culture?
Wow, my own culture. Damn, that's hard. My own culture. Honestly, I would say like my own identity, I guess. So if we're talking about my identity, then there's a bunch of stuff I could talk about. I'm a woman. I'm Asian American. I live in California. I was born here, so I have like a unique outlook on America and like my Chinese heritage, because I'm sort of like interconnected between the two, but don't really belong to one. So I would say that's a huge part of my own culture / identity.
What role do you think it being culture has shaped your beliefs and or behaviors? Feel free to give some examples.
I think when I was little, I didn't really like super register that I was different from a lot of other people. But then, like, the dividing barrier as I was slowly growing up was language was a huge one. Like, when I was little, I was more in tune with Mandarin, which is one of the languages that my family speaks. So I did that thing as a little kid where I would say something and then my brain would say it in Chinese, and then I would just accidentally, like, say shit in Chinese. I'd want to be like, hey, can you pass me the cereal or whatever? And then I'd accidentally say it in Chinese. I'd be like, oh shit, whoops, that's kind of embarrassing. That's one of the things I did. I remember one instance I did that at school and I was like, wow, that's kind of embarrassing for me. And then as I was growing up, it was just like, it's not a huge thing like here in California, I think, because we're kind of in like a melting pot. So honestly, like being an Asian American isn't really like special here because there's Asian American people like everywhere. I do remember one instance though, because I come from like a really white suburb-ish area. This dude like ran out, like he was sort of like jaywalking. Anyway, he ran out in front of my mom's car while she was driving, and then she almost hit him. And then he stopped in front of our car and like he pulled his eyes to make like the Asian eyes thing. And then he like laughed and left. And then me and my mom were just sitting in the car like flabbergasted that happened. Feel like offended or anything. It was just more like shocked and then kind of funny because we were like, wow, that's so cartoonishly racist that we both have to find that funny. Yeah, so that's one thing I remember. And then honestly, not really much else, I would say.
So on the Mandarin thing, you don't still speak Mandarin though, right?
No, I like lost my capability to speak well, like a few years ago, I would say. So the only way I can connect with Mandarin now is like I can understand when other people speak it. I can't write and I can't really speak that well.
How do you think culture has influenced your decision-making processes, basically risk assessment and problem solving.
I would say in a few ways it has. When I look at groups of people to approach, I would say sometimes I feel more comfortable approaching groups of like other Asian people, I would say. Maybe in school or like when I'm out, other communities, when I have to approach another group of people, I feel more comfortable.
Sorry, you're saying you feel more comfortable?
Oh yeah, anyway, I remember in like middle school or whatever, when you're still like kind of switching between like groups of friends or whatever, I hung out with like a lot of Asian people just to kind of figure out my identity. And this like kind of continued in high school. I had like this group of white friends and this group of like Asian friends, and like I used to hang out with like my group of white friends a lot, but I sort of felt like out of place all the time because it couldn't relate to their experiences. Like it felt like they had a very tailored experience for their family and their households or whatever, and I just could not relate. So I just sort of gradually stopped hanging out with them. That sort of affected my friend group growing up, I guess, because I pretty much fell in contact, like out of contact with all of them.
I'm also just wondering, your white friends seem more affluent?
Yeah.
Like on a middle class level or like higher in a sense? I'm just, again, wondering.
We live in like a pretty nice suburb area, so I would say we're all sort of middle class, but they're definitely, like my white friends are definitely like upper middle class, I would say. Whereas my other like Asian friends were sort of all just sort of like middle, sometimes lower class.
And I guess one other thing, just this is not even for the video, this is more like just for me wondering, your Asian friends, were they second generation plus, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Do you feel like stereotypes regarding your culture have affected your cognition and behavior?
Yeah, I would say so actually, because I can remember in like late-ish elementary school. Actually, no, this is probably middle school now that I think about it. But you know when kids sort of learn about stereotypes, and then like we're still at that age where we're sort of like registering and learning what's offensive and what's not.
Yeah.
Like middle school was that age where everyone was just sort of like full in like, haha, you're stereotype this, you're stereotype that, and we would all make fun of each other for shit. That's sort of like when we started, I guess, like we all sort of recognized like the stereotypes about ourselves. So I can remember that for sure when I was a kid. I feel like I'd sort of like, how do I explain this? I don't know, but I've been self-aware of it since middle school.
Yeah, I get it. I work at a tutoring place.
Yeah, it's not necessarily like a bad thing for me. Like I don't really like make conscious decisions around it. I don't feel. It's just like I am acutely aware of like stereotypes in the back of my head. And I feel like sometimes if I notice I'm falling into a stereotype, I'll try to fall out of it. But honestly, I feel like I'm not personally affected by it that much.
Lastly, do you feel that power imbalances can affect culture?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like a lot of different cultures are more focused on class than maybe some other cultures are. I know in India there's like a big focus on caste culture. I feel like China has like a sort of similar like focus on wealth and stuff. For you want to be rich, if you're rich, you want to stay rich, etc. I feel like it's sort of similar with America. There's like this focus on higher, middle, lower class. And I feel like when you have all these different cultures together, these sort of different ideas about class sort of intermingle, I guess. I notice my white friends don't really pay attention to class that much, whereas like my Asian friends will sort of comment on these types of subjects sometimes.
You hang out with your Asian friends more though, right?
Yeah, I still vaguely keep in contact with some of my white friends, but we don't really talk that much. My current group chat is with my Asian friends.
There's no overlap. One group is distinctly white and one group is distinctly Asian.
Yeah.
I guess percentage-wise, for the vacuum of just friendship, hanging out stuff, like what percentage-wise, what would you say you hang out with each group?
My white group friends, okay, I had like a bunch of different like group friends in high school, and then I just like slowly started hanging out more with just one. So I would say like early high school, I hung out with all of them a lot, but mostly my white friends. And then over time, like maybe my third, fourth year in high school, I was almost fully with my Asian friends. And now they're pretty much like the only group of people I talk to.
Is there any lingering notes you want to say on this?
I mean, I hope I provided you some useful information. I feel like I just rambled.
I mean, that's fine, as it doesn't even really have to be on topic, because the encapsulation of culture is within every single moment and every single person we meet. And that's just some...
Wow.
I don't know, I'm just saying some BS right now. I don't know what I'm saying. This is for my Professor RJ. I hope you had fun listening to this.
Yeah, shout out to RJ.
Yeah.
Right.
What would you say your culture is?
Culture?
Yeah.
Oh god. Nothing.
Nothing.
No.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. No. It's real. I'll give real serious answers only. Well, you mean like the official name of it?
However you want to answer.
Okay. England immigrants.
And just to clarify, you yourself are not an immigrant, right? So if you were to give like a rough definition for culture, what would you say it is?
It's something people hold on to feel united.
Okay. Or what role do you think culture has shaped your beliefs and/or behaviors?
Severe to moderately.
Yes. Could you give any examples?
I respect British culture, but in some ways I don't respect British culture. I think there are reasons my parents left England, and I also think there are reasons my parents might leave America.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's understandable. Okay. Feel like your culture has affected your decision-making process or like problem solving or risk assessment? Any of that?
Yes. Well, I try not to let it do that, but it does, yeah.
Oh, okay. Could you like give an example, I guess?
I'll give a joke example and then a serious example. So if I'm doing something with a bunch of friends and there's something that they're doing that's a norm that I am uncomfortable with doing for reasons I can't really think of in my head, my brain, the little British accent goes, "He's fucking stupid, stop," and I stop doing it. I don't know, like I feel like my dad's attitude towards doing things, and also to an extent my mom's, is something that a lot of American households, I would assume. I'm only speaking of like white American households because that's what I grew up around, but a lot of I don't know, I feel like there's a different type of thought process when, I don't know, maybe small, but like when I'm thinking about something, I usually think about it in a way that I would assume cultural thinking in like this part of America.
Okay, I think I somewhat understand.
Also because okay, England is a lot closer to the east, so I would say cultural similarities on the east coast of America are far more close to British ideology than Western. So here, I think part of the reason I think that is because it proved it because my mom moved here and had noticeable differences about the culture here than on the East Coast, which I have no experience in, but I'm just relating her experiences.
Do you feel like stereotypes have affected how you acquire knowledge?
Stereotypes about my culture.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, could you give an example?
Okay, well, I'm not British, I'm American. If you're talking about stereotypes that people have told me about me, I would say they probably do, but I'm not as prone to recognizing them as people that have been with me have. So I'd say that. Wait, sorry. Repeat the question again.
Do you feel like stereotypes regarding your culture have affected your cognition? So basically, the way you acquire information.
Yeah. Do you want me to give examples?
Give at least one, I guess.
Okay, so yes, and an example would be my way of like thinking about isolation opposed to okay, this is a good one. I think that it has drastically affected my views on extroversion and introversion, and you know what is like a must have for myself. Yeah, and I would. Do you want me to tell you why, or is that it?
Oh, I mean, if you want to, go ahead.
Okay. I'll end it there. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Do you feel that power imbalances can affect culture? I know this one's a bit different than the other ones.
Like, you mean the entire culture? Or just like
different cultures, I guess.
Our imbalances as human beings, or my personal imbalance?
As a whole, like, there's different cultures, so there's sometimes different power structures and hierarchies within that.
Are you talking genetic imbalances?
Imbalances? This is a very general framework.
Power imbalances as a society.
Balances as a society is one way of thinking of things. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I was eating a chocolate. Our imbalances as society, do you think they affect culture? Yes. Culture is what it is. There's not really it's not solidified. Nothing is solidified except for rock, which isn't solidified. So I think just like time changes, cultures are like an ocean or a river, and they adapt new things and release new things constantly. And it's all someone's interpretation of what it means to a movement, to themselves, to a way of doing things, a way of order in entropy. I think that's what culture is. Whether or not the imbalances of the human race impact it positively or negatively, that will be what history is.
What would you consider your culture to be?
It's a great question. I mean, ethnically, I'm Dutch German, and I'm closer to my Dutch side because I've had some like food from my grandma, and she's told us about like a little bit of history and how our family is impacted by World War II. And my German side, I get like stories from my mom about my grandma, like the dishes she used to make, but a lot of those recipes are sort of lost, and my mom doesn't really make them anymore. But honestly, I really connect a lot with like the SoCal, like surfer, like beachy culture. Honestly, like I think of culture, I think of how much I connect with people from like the other beach cities, even people from other beach cities across the world. I think there's a similar culture you share when you're like you grow up by the beach and you grow up like doing a lot of activities there, and you kind of get like a certain level of interest in like conservation, and there's a certain, I think, respect for environmentalism and some level of liberalism. Not everyone is liberal by the beach, but most people have like some level of, I don't know, respect. And so yeah, I think those are my two answers.
What would you define as culture? I mean, you're trying to give a rough definition now.
Sure. I mean, for my antho class, I remember it's about kind of like the core, like the set of practices and traditions that like inform how you interact with the world, like the type of food you make, the type of clothes you wear, how you raise your kids, how you expect like people to regulate their emotions, how you like resolve conflicts. I think personally I almost define culture in like relation to other cultures. Like I think you can't define one culture without contrasting it to someone else, like defining, women-led versus male-led cultures, defining, I don't know, religious cultures versus non-religious cultures. I think there's, culture is made up by people, and only by noticing like differences can you understand like what you like want, like what you want to be like similar, what you want to keep the same in your culture, and what you want to exclude. So yeah, I think culture is contextual, and culture is made up by the people in that moment, and it changes, every day, every year as people come in and out and bring new ideas, and old ideas get rejected.
A question of what role do you think it being culture has shaped your beliefs and or behaviors, like your own culture, not...
I think the Dutch German culture is pretty secular. So my parents growing up, even though my mom was Catholic, she wasn't really like, she was like culturally Catholic, like she wasn't super practicing. And same with my dad, like there wasn't enough time for church. So I think having pretty like a less religious background, I think made it so there was less chance for like conservative bias. And I mean, I'm sure it also made it easier for me to like come out as queer. And also, I think as being like California and American and like that region, I think made me very comfortable with diverse groups and different mindsets, and being comfortable with other races and gender identities and religions. And I think being exposed to like a variety of that at junior college and state college, because I was in that group. I know if I was again, I'm comparing to another culture, if I was in like the South where it was like 90% white and I never met like a black person or an Ecuadorian person or a Nigerian person, I think I'd have a much different relationships with those other people. And as far as my like beach culture, I think that honestly I feel community when I learn people are like from like a beach town a couple cities over, or people are from a beach town in another world. I feel like I notice similarities between like how we approach things, like especially when it comes like, there's like different cultures have different perceptions of time, and I think a lot of Western culture is very like on it, but like with the kind of beachy relaxed time is more closer to like island and tropical and like other cultures. So I think having that spill over, even though it came from other, Caribbean and tropical cultures, I'm glad I was able to experience that, because I don't feel like I'm usually missing out on things. I feel like things will happen when they're meant to, and if it doesn't happen one day, it can happen the next. So I think not having that strict adherence to like timelines is really beneficial to me.
I find it interesting you say that because your talking speed reminds me of city people.
My mom's from New York, actually.
Oh, okay. So how do you feel your culture has influenced your decision-making processes, such as risk assessment and problem solving?
I do feel like I'm unlearning a lot of like my individualistic tendencies, and it's hard, I think, sometimes for me to realize when to like ask for more help and when I can't solve a problem on my own, because I feel like I'm not. It's like a failing on me, or like it's showing like there's not enough strength or not enough capability. So that sort of individual approach versus like a more collectivist or community approach. I mean, even though I was raised in a small community, my family kept to themselves, and we didn't know our neighbors very well. So and then as far as risk assessment, kind of conservative when it comes to like certain monetary purchases. I don't buy, like I don't own a car. I don't have like I have an iPhone SE that's from like 4 years ago. I haven't upgraded. I'm not upgrading till it breaks. Like my computer's like 4 or 5 years old. I have a lot of like thrifted and donated furniture. Like I don't need to have like the latest newest thing. Like consumerism, I like certain, like I spend money on like food and experiences and like helping people, but I'm not very driven by like fads and trends. So I think where I would take more risks is like if like someone needs like assistance, or somebody needs to be like, they need bail money, or if they need like I think where I am more risky with spending money when it's like if someone's in great need. And then as far as other risk assessment, like I put myself in like physical danger, I guess I sometimes like go first, think later, and I don't know if I think that might stem from the kind of individual kind of everyone's their own hero, you can save the world approach that like is very American. So that's very American of me. And now sort of also unlearning that and realizing that sometimes I'm not always the best to handle a situation, and to like step back and let someone else more capable lead is like what I'm learning. Is that risk assessment, and the other one, did I cover both things? Problem solving. So like try to problem solve alone usually. Like I hated group work growing up. I felt like I could always do things quicker with other people. But now as I got older, I think unlearning some of that American value and realizing that I actually get so much more done when I'm in community and I'm relying on other people, and like being vulnerable is like a strength. So I think I'm starting to problem solve by bringing people in earlier, and I think that's because I've moved from like Southern California to more like Bay Area and being like a new environment. I was like acclimating to like a different culture, and I think it's sort of like the clash of old values and new values, and finding like which ones can be adapted and which ones I don't want to take on. Like I'm not gonna wear a Patagonia vest. I refuse that.
Even if it's thrifted?
I'd wear a vest, but like not Patagonia, like a wool vest.
Sorry, Patagonia is a brand, right?
Yeah, it's just like the tech like uniform of like the dark navy jeans, the Patagonia vest, and like the gray sweatshirt is like when you see some people wearing. I don't know. I have a thing with like I don't have a lot of rules with fashion. I think people should wear whatever they want. I really appreciate when people like are intentional with what they wear. So even I think choosing that uniform is intentional and like wanting to fit into something. So like I'm not dissing it for that reason. But I think seeing sameness is something I don't usually like in architecture and other things. Like sameness really kind of like freaks me out. I don't know where that falls into. I probably maybe that individualism. I want to see more uniqueness. I want to see more variance. I think like normalcy is the enemy.
Do you feel like stereotypes regarding your culture has affected your cognition and behavior?
Stereotypes about my culture affected my cognition. Yeah, I think when I learned more about the common stereotypes for like American people, especially like white American people, I think it did make me more aware of like even if something I didn't intend, like an action or behavior wasn't intended to come across the way, it could be interpreted a different way. So I think understanding my culture more and how it's perceived by others has affected how I interact in certain like multicultural spaces when I'm like maybe the only one from that culture, and knowing that I need to be more present and aware of my interactions with people. So yeah, it has sneaked into my cognition.
Do you feel that power imbalances can affect culture?
Yes.
And I will tell you, I do not want to be here all day, but feel free to say what you want.
Well, it's been, 15 minutes? I'll give you a 2-minute answer. I think culture, I'm very saddened by people who kind of have like a revisionist like look at history and sort of like assume that like the way we've got here is how like we've always been like saying that capitalism, consumerist culture is like predestined, when there was a lot of intentional decisions by leaders to like push their agenda and to to bring other people under them and colonialize and to conquer, and not necessarily isn't like the de facto state of people. Like there are other cultures, like pastoral cultures, herd animals that are migratory. There's horticulturists who sort of grow smaller gardens that help tend areas to like it's like a more decentralized natural farming techniques. It doesn't really fully plow the whole land, but just works with what's there and helps tend to seeds to make things grow, as well as gathering cultures that hunt and farm off the land. So assuming that like any of those other cultures could be like the norm like today, and assuming that like agrarian industrial cultures were destined to succeed is like, I think, a result of bad history and bad training and education in our communities. And I think it's evident that's a direct representation of how certain dominant cultures have power to reshape the narratives and to make it seem like their cultures were always just and right and better. And I think that's something that we have to be really careful of when we teach the next generation, because that's not true. And just because a culture's smaller and isn't like fucking owning Levi's doesn't mean they're not valid and they're not insignificant. They're significant.
The definitions of culture can differ from person to person, as you can see, but its tremendous power is still understood. Due to the mix of understanding of culture and different interpretations of it, the subject is somewhat difficult to analyze from an observer perspective. Throughout this analysis, I will describe my observations on stated truths, unstated truths, and missteps throughout the process of interviewing individuals and these videos. Originally, I hypothesized that this project would teach me about the wide scope of society, or at the very least, my regions, countries, counties, or cities' communal thought process. However, this ended up being a far more personal project than I realized. I didn't do an open call to the general public or even the populace of San Francisco State University students. The highest degree of separation I had was 2. This was of a mutual friend of my close friend that I didn't have an inclination to ask directly from interviews. To dive deeper into everyone's definition of culture, a layer of obscurity and confusion in regards to interviewees was used unless they asked for a definition. Instead of responding with any semblance of a proper textbook or informal definition, I instead usually gave examples of culture. One simple reason is that one of the interviewee questions was asking them their definition of culture. The other reason being that the vast range of definitions of culture obscure and hinder. For instance, some research considered culture to be static and group cohesion. While I agree that culture is associated and sometimes defined as group cohesion, I simply disagree that culture is static, as culture changes over time. An example is the ever-changing American culture throughout its history, from 13 rebellious colonies to a single capitalist sovereignty. In future work, I may include definitions like I did with Cognition. Regarding how the question of relating power and its effects on culture, the answers varied quite a bit. Before one of my friends answered, I knew they would go on for hours if I did not instruct them to limit their words beforehand. Even then, the video was edited out to cut out some of the time. This hindered the original message and overall impact of the interviews. But the overall project was exceeding some time limitations. In a sense, I see the reasoning as to why news stations cut large portions of their interviews to small clips and transfer those into small headlines and summaries. Aside from logistics, some individuals talked about if power did not affect culture on ethnic or racial lines, rather than political or even no way at all. However, many subtly or directly reference injustices of a dominant hierarchical power over others. Regarding the questions on stereotypes, power on cognition, risk assessment, and behavior, many of my interviewees openly stated how they consciously strive to fight stereotypes about their race and ethnicity. Most of the stated stereotypes seem to derive from those attributed towards Asians as a whole and Chinese people as a subgroup. This is true even for people that were not Chinese or were just half. In 2 cases, those individuals could not even name the stereotypes about their own non-Chinese ethnicity when asked. I think this rather speaks to the Chinese-centric mindset for many Americans rather than the interviewees not acknowledging stereotypes as a whole. I made a few observations about my friends' traits, including most of them being the same race as me, including many of them being the same ethnicity. The 2 individuals that I know are Caucasian and Chinese only spoke of their Chinese culture despite their Caucasian's fathers raising them, telling me of their somewhat strict academic upbringing from their Asian mothers. However, one of them did mention their American nationality and other hobbies, rather than solely identifying with Chinese culture. Because I did not give any more questions regarding their culture or give examples of culture, they defaulted to their presumed dominant culture in some cases. A part of me questions how dominant this culture is, though, because neither of them spoke Chinese or took part in Chinese culture for the most part. For instance, I quite literally watched one of them learn how to use chopsticks at the age of 17. Some parents think that children within Asian households should learn chopsticks at the age of 6. However, my inclusion of this reference is somewhat pessimistic and judgmental, as everyone learns at their own rate. Research regarding social groups covers a whole wide range of topics. However, I will be just focusing on racism. Leif noticed how ethnic groups in American schools may voluntarily segregate in schools. Also, Leif noticed how made somewhat an outlandish claim that voluntary listed instances of homophobia, racism, and sexism is not exactly xenophobia. Perhaps hinting at a new word should be made, and to be honest, I agree. I know from personal experience that this sexist, homophobic, racial, and ethnic exclusion occurs in high schools, but depending on the school, there always be inclusion of outsiders. Maybe that's a little bit too optimistic when I wrote this. For a better word, it does feel different, but I would not deny that it will be similar. Another unspoken observation was none of the individuals spoke of their disabilities or impairment. Many people do not align themselves with such a community or culture. Gotta think about that. Maybe I rather say that people don't identify as with that culture. But I'll say my first hypothesis as to why my friends interviewed did not is because they specifically do not have a community of fellow disabled individuals. My second hypothesis is that they see a larger community, such as San Francisco or California, as accepting enough to be their community, but not specifically call it a community of such nature. My third hypothesis is that these individuals do have a safe space for members of the disabled community, but simply did not want to mention this. In any case, I did not directly ask any of the interviewees to not make them uncomfortable. Throughout my youth and even adulthood, people with disabilities are often not shown. While not a direct comparison, differently abled people and neurotypical people have been compared with insensitive phrasing, sometimes also such as autism to living on an island. I'm kind of torn between agreeing with one of my classmates that in a general and very, very vague sense, the comparison is somewhat accurate to a degree, but also torn apart with the intensity when approaching the subject. Of course, there has always been much research and cultural change in academia since the publication. Oh my god, I was born that year. Anyways, in an attempt to somewhat rectify this, some ticks and other audible cues were included in the video because for such a long time, people who were differently abled were essentially erased by history and media, because I'm including my own. I hope that in the future, creativity and documentary media includes a truly diverse group of people. Various mistakes in taking the video footage also degraded the product. For instance, I forgot that I have shaky hands. Some videos of it were included to show how difficult it could be to live my life and show some of those aspects, showing my anxious disposition and relatively weak body. Many of the shots were also mundane, but not necessarily a mistake, as the architecture, people, and various commercial products are mundane to people that have experienced a life similar to me. Those same experiences are unique to people across the world, and sometimes people living in the city that just haven't experienced them, to show the differences in culture or being individual perspectives, if that's how you want to phrase it. This project revealed some information about myself that I internalized. Despite my friends not being ethnically diverse, they have very different views on race and power structures. Since I've entered college, I have somewhat visually homogenous friends in race, and in a disproportionately amount of friends that have a legal disability. In other words, maybe I should get more friends. I don't know. That sounded kind of out of context, that sounds bad. But yeah, I think everyone should get more friends, right? While I'm somewhat satisfied with the project, in the future I want to dive deeper into such information about culture and power structures.